hi to the camera.
Hey everyone.
I'm actually pretty excited about this topic because seeing this problem being there, is it social fi or social fi? So our host Anna is going to be a little bit late, so I'll be moderating the session. Okay. Good afternoon, fellows. Our next session will be social fi or social fi. And let's start with a round introduction. So starting from me, I'm Jeff from RSys3, and let's go with it this way.
Yeah, hey, I'm Joonatan. I'm the CEO, one of the co-founders of Phaver, one of the biggest Web3 social apps right now, the biggest app on Lens.
Hi, I'm Chelsea.
Sorry, let's switch over. Let me go.
Okay.
But you gave you the, you did one.
Hi, I'm Chelsea, and I am the operations lead at Mass Network.
Hello, I'm Phaver. I am the head of BD of Mantle. We are not only an EVML2, we're also a liquid staking protocol.
Okay, let's start with something light. So start with Joonatan. So Phaver has been doing pretty well, and there's anticipation for potential airdrop, which I'm currently farming. And so can I ask, like, what inspired you to create Phaver, and why do you think that we need social fi?
Yeah, I think originally we started building in the Web2 space for a recommendation app, then we realized that actually Web2 is kind of too broken to be fixed with extensions. You kind of have to build from the ground up. And there's kind of a very long list of reasons why that is, including, for example, that only a few people in the world control all of the algorithms that determine which news we're consuming, etc. And we realized that Web3 is kind of finally getting to a point where it actually is viable a couple of years ago when we started. So we figured that now is probably the time to start building in that and trying to be part of the movement where we try to move things into a setup where people actually own their own social graphs. And then through that, pretty much a lot of the other issues should be solved, like fair monetization, multiple algorithm options, multiple content options, being able to innovate on top of the graphs without being run like with Twitter or the Web2 apps, and so on. So there's kind of so many good reasons why it should happen, and we just want to be part of that to hopefully make it happen where we replace Web2 apps with Web3.
Okay, awesome. So next one for Chelsea. So Mass Network has been very innovative, and we're seeing like social fi getting a lot of tractions. And would Mass Network focus, say like in 2024 or like 2025 or go on? Will Mass Network be more focusing on like the financial part or like the social part?
I think that Mass Network is focused more on onboarding new users, so onboarding Web2 users over to Web3. I think that that's a main point of interest for us. And Mass, if you're familiar, we invest in a lot of projects, and the thesis is heavily in social fi, so investing in Lens protocol, Farcaster, and a lot of different types of apps and consumer apps and infrastructure for social fi, and making it easier and more onboardable. I do think that there's always talk about the financialization of social fi. That's important. There are certain apps for that, and there's a certain place for it. I would say there's, of course, the user base in Web3 that's already heavily financial and financialized. That's our niche, but as we push through and we want to onboard new users, it's going to be less and less focused on just the financial, even though that's an opportunity that we can bring to the new users that are coming into the space.
Okay. Okay, so next question for Xerox Viewer. Throughout the previous cycle, we've been seeing many established investors supporting numerous projects in social fi vertical. And despite large amount of funding, some will agree that social fi vertical is not really, like, say, taken off. And why do you think that this is the case, and would Mantle be as an infrastructure layer to support social fi projects?
So TLDR for the question is why, despite you having so much money in the treasury, why do you not have social fi? That's a TLDR. Yeah. think we took a very different approach from a lot of other L2s that were born in the last year or so. So on July 17th we launched, but we launched not with a standard stack, but we had some innovation. So we launched with an OVM2, Optimism's previous stack, and combined that with eigenlayers. Our own instance of eigenlayers, EigenDA, which we've worked with them, for the last 2 years. And with that, comes a lot of, infrastructure situations where not everything is immediately compatible with Mantle. So I think we've really focused on making sure that the infrastructure is ready for other applications to build on. Also, I think even though most of these L2 chains now are general purpose chains, but they do carve out a niche. So it's very clear that when they launch immediately, it was very social heavy, consumer crypto, friend tech onboarded, and everybody thinks of Base, for example, as the social fi and consumer layer. For us, our edge is very different. For me, I mean, we could even go back and take a look at the definition of social fi. What does that even mean? For me, it's like whatever brings a community together under or on top of some sort of crypto rails. So for me, actually, DeFi is some of the most social, financial kind of layers. So for us, we focus on DeFi. We see a lot of community building around DeFi rails. And not all of those are fully on chain. A lot of it happens on Telegram. A lot of it happens on Twitter, obviously. So yeah, for us, we've just been focusing on community building, DeFi, making sure that liquidity is there, making sure that your UX is there for the infra itself. That being said, I mean, also I wanted to mention building consumer level applications usually means you're building a mobile application at this point, right? The user of today is kind of a snob about their requirements for like very, very, very good consumer social applications. And I think right now for crypto, we're at a fairly big disadvantage because Apple Store is problematic, Android Store is problematic, Google Store is problematic. It's difficult to build social applications, consumer applications in those stores for various reasons. But also, most of crypto teams are very, very small. It's hard to find teams who have the capacity that YouTube and Facebook and Google and all these massive big tech teams have. And I used to work in consumer application space before, and the resources there versus in like you may have a whole team just working on a search button, right? In crypto, it's very different, and I think it's hard to find the founders and teams that have the capacity to create just kind of tier 1 level consumer and social fi applications. Maybe Joonatan is one of the rare ones.
Hopefully.
Yeah, definitely that's the case. Since Web2 companies have a lot of resources to do this, and also like consumers are like spoiled by those like really fluent and seamless experience. So following up, it's coming like the question. So what do you think about social fi or social fi? So from my perspective, I'm seeing like a lot of people interacting in social fi in the Web3 space because they want to farm airdrop, because they want to earn. So like, what's your take on this? Like, how are you feeling like this evolving in the future? Say like, are people really trying to use this app because they want to use it, or is it like more like a financial like direction?
Yeah, I think that the users that we have now, they're actually great test users for the ability to monetize and to build out those monetization tools. But in the future, of course, as we're onboarding new users, I think it should be more in the back end. People don't realize that they are using a wallet, or they don't have to tap into the monetization side. But right now, the Web3 space, obviously, we're onboarding users of Aave to Lens. We're onboarding users from DeFi protocols to social apps. And there is definitely room for that, especially I think in the NFT space. And to have communities around it, we had all done that in the past. off-chain, like you said, like we would have a Telegram group that you needed to hold a certain token to have, or an NFT. And I guess that is technically on-chain, but having these like apps that build it in, where you can, a content creator can have, they can launch their own NFT, they can launch their own creator token, and they would be able to create communities and audiences based on who's holding their asset. And that is something that is very different, and they own that, and they own this community. They own their own asset. They are owning their own footprint, which is different than X, for instance, where you could subscribe and pay, but you're at the whim of that social platform that could shut down your account at any time. And these things are what is so appealing to us and what's so revolutionary in our world, in our mind, and could be also revolutionary to outside users and people as well. And then there are already, there's ways in which you can monetize in Web 2 too. There's streaming, there's OnlyFans. Like Friendtech kind of reminds me of like OnlyFans in a way, where you just pay shares in order to chat with someone. But not every content creator wants to chat with people. So it works for certain users in a certain way, but there's different, more diversified ways where people can monetize, like creating games, collection, art, etc. In Web3 social.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, kind of how we at Phaver view things is that we kind of want to also separate a little bit between SocialFi and DSOC, so decentralized social. If you look at the apps right now, for example, Farcaster and Lens are pretty much just decentralized social. There's no financial component into it. There may be a token at some point, but there hasn't been any explicit promise of any, and it's not really built into the system in any explicit way. Then on the other hand, the Friendtech, for example, was purely SocialFi, so it wasn't really decentralizing your social. It wasn't really giving you any genuine ownership of things. It was more building kind of an artificial layer of building kind of imaginary shares of your Twitter profile that didn't actually correlate with anything. So that's kind of a textbook example of the financial part of it. And Phaver is kind of a mixture in the sense that we do believe that we've been always very explicit that the token is coming, because we kind of know that even if you tell people the token is not coming, they're not going to believe you. They're going to be still attempting to farm a token. So from the get-go, Phaver has been kind of embracing that promise that we are building a token, and we are actually getting very close to launching one right now. So those farming efforts hopefully won't go in vain. But that also means that we've been practicing for the last 2 years for how to deal with the farming. And most recently we rolled out the new point economy variation, where actually the most lucrative way to farm, so to say, on Phaver is by faving. So you get 5 to 20 faves per day, where you can cast them on your favorite posts. And then if others actually agree with you, it's sort of an anonymous consensus mechanism, but in a very simplified way, so you don't see how many faves a post has before you fave it yourself. And therefore you just have to kind of look at, is this post something that's interesting enough that it should be one of the most popular ones today? That way we can actually reward the curators if they're successful at that, and we can make it really hard to farm in a mechanical way. So if you're farming it by helping us curate the best content of the day, are you actually farming or actually meaningfully participating in the equation? So SocialFi can be kind of used also in sustainable ways as part of that social itself. It can be also used in very unsustainable ways, as we've seen with Friendtech, and we've seen with BitClout and many of the others before. So if it's purely on the speculative side of things, it's not going to carry on for too long. But if you can make it sort of a sustainable financial loop, then there is hope to actually work. But then the decentralized part is more about, do you actually own your connection with your followers? Do you actually own your social graph? And that's where Lens and Farcaster and the various NFT-based setups are excelling.
Awesome. Also with some alphas. Great.
Yeah, very quickly, I don't have any specific point. I'm also not building a SocialFi application, so I'm just going to blabber. For me, I think the most important thing is still the social side of things. Right? I think that's the most sustainable way of building something. I think quite often, if you emphasize the FI part of social FI, I think it attracts a crowd that maybe I don't want to be involved in, and oftentimes ruins a lot of early communities and so on, which we've seen in almost every Discord group right now, and certainly Farcaster is seeing a lot of growing pains now from a lot of noise from not very perhaps valuable contributions. So for me, yeah, I think we should focus on smaller communities, smaller niche communities. We should focus on what actually brings people together, what problems do we want to solve together. If you start from the FI side, it's just not going to make it. Like, it's going to pump for a second, 2 months, you're gone. We've seen already a lot of these cases. So for us also, when we're looking at ecosystem development, when we're looking at applications that are onboarding to Mantle, and when we're deciding which ones we want to support, we're definitely looking at which problems are trying to solve. Are you trying to solve something that's actually a real pain point for the user? And if you're purely just trying to farm, well, likely it's not going to be a sustainable, successful application for the future. Right? That's what we're focusing on right now.
Yeah, totally. So Farcaster actually started with like a small developer group and like very concentrated. It's not until they added the FI part that turns out to be a lot of noise there.
Yeah, and I'd like to add also, from my side, selfishly, right? I only use a couple apps in general. Like, I don't have time, right? So fragmentation of focus, I think, unfortunately, perhaps I still use Twitter and Telegram, and that's just about it. There's of course email and all sorts of things. I have been using Farcaster. I was one of the early users, but I also have some perhaps issues with our community extracting ourselves away from the public square, because Farcaster does become more more of a walled garden in some way, even though it's not supposed to be that, but it does become more of a small circle of, if you know type of people. And I think there's some like maybe ethical issue with that too. So to counter all of this intuitively important direction for social FI, decentralized social especially, I do still think it's very important to stay in the public square. Wherever like most of the even normies are, we should be engaging and kind of showing what's happening in crypto and blockchain.
Yeah, totally agree.
Just commenting on the kind of Farcaster financialization, I think the interesting part there is that like technically Farcaster and WordCast haven't really been adding financialization on top of it, but because they are sort of a permissionless setup, as the previous demo was also talking about it, not surprisingly, the frames have become a way of financializing the Mint My Shitcoin frames and Mint My meme NFT frames. So the moment you let the degens loose, they're going to be building their own sort of like overlaid third-party economy, even on something that technically doesn't have the financialization as we saw here, where like degen is also a meme coin that's technically not part of the official ecosystem, but rather kind of builds on top of that ecosystem, as are the OG Farcaster NFTs that have been gaining value. And kind of the problem here is, again, as I mentioned before, like even if you explicitly say that we have no current plans to launch a token, like both Stani and Dan have been saying, everybody expects that they will eventually anyway, and they will try to farm. So like even if you try to not financialize it, somebody will financialize it on your behalf, it seems. So that's also one of the reasons why we have embraced that from the get-go. Like the farmers are going to come, the speculators are going to come. How do we make them work for everybody's advantage instead of doing something that hurts everyone? So posting spam posts is going to hurt everyone. Posting the frames for random scammy meme coins, probably not great. But trying to find useful ways of like actually farming that system is I think a lot more potential.
Also, I think if we were to pull out from the financial side, I think that we could do a lot in our marketing towards, there are value propositions that we offer that are, like there's problems in Web 2 social, there's problems with censorship, there's problems with algorithms that are manipulated, And so I think that there are people who are, there's a problem, and there are users who can have solutions or can be solutioned in Web3 based on us having a different ethos towards the way that content creators are able to share their content, and we're not focused on these algorithms to manipulate the users. So I think that just pulling out of the financial side, I guess it's marketing, just getting that message out there that there's more to Web3 social that we can offer users, already existing social users now.
Yeah, I agree. So we can all agree that we're still in the wild west. We're like still early stage, so they're like trying a lot of new experiments, safe frames, to see if it works out, and then it's gonna push forward the whole Web3 space. So on to our last question. It's an open question as well. So back to our event title, open information. So what do you think is open information to you, and what is open web to you?
I can maybe start. So I think the kind of first thing that we did back in the day when we started building on the Web3 Phaver was we realized that we could build our own NFT profiles. But then the problem is that like we give people a key, but we have the only lock for that key, and we can change the locks at any point. So you're not actually giving people control over their profiles if we are the only ones where you can use it. And by partnering up with Lens from the get-go on the setup, we kind of forfeit the control. So we give you the key, and it works on 20 different locks. They can be orb, they can be hay, they can be butterfly, and that means that that's kind of our commitment to the open part of things, where since users have the control to go elsewhere, the only power we have is we can choose not to show their stuff on Phaver, or we can choose not to reward them on Phaver, but we cannot choose what they're allowed to say and what they're not allowed to say. We cannot choose whether they are allowed to keep their network or not, which are very dangerous things in the Web2 setup, where the moment you say the one wrong thing, you might lose 10 years of history. And that's kind of, I think, a key thing for social is that the moment you have choice, that means you have choice of algorithm, you have choice of filtering, choice of censorship, choice of front end you're using, and all that will mean that we hopefully get to a point where like there's going to be a lot more of a fair space, and people can actually make their choices based on their own kind of preferences as well.
Also, I think that since you'll have an identity in Web3 where it's portable, so you have an app that you're using where you share updates, like a Twitter type of app, or Phaver, you can do that as well. But then you also have YouTube video applications or games. There's different types of applications in Web3, but you have your identity, and be able to port that identity across these different types of communities, I think is important. So there's a certain way that you use a video application, or there's a certain way that you use a streaming application. There's a certain way that you use a Twitter type of application, but you still have the same identity. Your identity, just across different apps. So I think that could be interesting to explore, because of course, if you're on a picture sharing application, like an Instagram type of app on Web3, perhaps you wouldn't share, I keep bringing up adult content, but like you wouldn't share adult content on it. But there could be an app for that, but you still have the same identity, you just use it differently for different types of applications. So I think that's an interesting piece that we have that Web2 doesn't.
Great.
Yeah, from my perspective, like all the way back to Satoshi's Bitcoin white paper, it promised a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. I think a lot of us thought this is an anonymous way of doing kind of digital peer-to-peer transactions and so on. We all very soon figured out that this is radically not anonymous and radically not private. So it is actually very, very open. Just the entire blockchain rail is extremely open. I think the beautiful parts of that is, especially for the builder, I think, like the fact that you have this, I like the word infinite garden, but like this just like infinite set of data and clay to play with that is not owned by any centralized behemoth of a company. So yeah, it creates a nice little playground for developers and hackers and creative folks who try to do something with that data. So I think in terms of innovation, it's beautiful. I think the downsides of that are a little bit dystopian for my mind. There is a reason why I don't really want to do POAPs. Like I don't want to leave my mark everywhere I go. I don't want to, when I go to 7-Eleven and I buy chapstick, I don't want the whole world to know. And then it scales to all sorts of transactions that I do. So I think there's like a balance that we need to remember. Open information in itself is not a virtue. We have to be critical of what should be open, what should not be open. What kind of tools should we create to give the user and the builder a choice of what they want to keep open. So yeah, I just want to encourage people. Just like decentralization, I think is not a value. I think it's a thing, and some things may be utopian, some things may be dystopian, but we have to have a critical eye toward it. The same thing with open information, open data, and so on. So just encourage everyone to be also critical of this stuff.
Yeah, totally agree. So, you both touch on this, but the openness is like giving the choice back to the people. Like for me, I'm like lazy. If it's me on like going on social media, I don't want to take care of myself. I don't want to take care of my key. You can take it from me. But I would like to have the choice to give you the permission. Yeah. So
And quickly, and a lot of this is also technical innovation, right? Like ZK proofs are helping with a lot of this. Regulation could help with a lot of this. Unfortunately, a lot of our transactions, due to regulation, are not allowed to be private. So again, yeah, there's lots of work to be done there. But I do agree with the choice aspect.
yeah, we definitely touched on that the other day about how regulation really fall back from the evolution of technology. But yeah, that's another matter. So, do we have any questions from the audience? All right. So thank you guys for joining us in Saturday afternoon.
Thank you.
Really inspiring. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.